One track, two cars and a stopwatch. It's a fifth gear shootout. And this time, we've gathered together old and new versions of the world's most iconic and enduring high-performance sports saloon, the BMW M3. From the early noughties comes the E46. To date, it's the company's best-selling M3 and for many, the best-looking. In fact, the E46 looks positively dainty beside the current model, the brutal, snarling G80. As you might expect, the latest car has more power and more torque. However, it's a lot heavier. So while it's definitely advantaged G80, the lighter E46 should be more nimble and might hold its own on the twistiest sections of the track. There's only one way to find out. Let's start by wallowing in some nostalgia.
Now, the very first M3, which is the E30, went on sale, I mean, this is unbelievable, in 1986. And BMW only created this car so that it could take on Mercedes-Benz in the world-renowned German Touring Car Championship.
The regulations demanded they produce 5,000 road-going models, but such was the clamour for the car, 18,000 were eventually produced. And even though there was never a right-hand drive version, it didn't stop British petrol heads latching on to this Uber saloon.
Why not? It looked good, it was practical, it was well-made, but most importantly, it pretty much ate most sports cars of the day for breakfast.
The M3 phenomenon had begun, and since then, every new 3 Series has been accompanied by an M model.
The E46 was the third M3 that they produced. It went on sale in 2000 for about 40 grand. I had one of these in 2002, I think it was, in a beautiful esterol blue. I loved it. I loved the fact it was quick and, you know, it was great fun to drive, but I liked the fact it was relatively understated. You know, it had these lovely little bulges on the bodywork, had a little bump in the bonnet. Kind of gave you glimpses that there was something a bit saucy underneath, but it wasn't in your face. You know, quad exhaust, yeah, maybe, in your face. Now, up front, we've got a normally aspirated straight-six 3.2 litre, which will rev to 8,000 revs.
That adds up to 343 horsepower, and the sound it makes is, well, it's glorious.
Albeit, they all sound like they need a little bit of oil because they have got this metallic twang to them. But it's a lovely noise. I mean, listen to this. Isn't it great?
To direct the power to the back axle, E46 owners had a choice of a 6-speed manual or an SMG semi-automatic gearbox, like this one.
Now, most of the journalists at the time were saying they would prefer the manual gearbox. I chose mine with the SMG. I thought the manual gearbox, whilst it was lovely, the throw on the gear lever was a bit too long, and I wanted to try something different. And do you know what? I loved the SMG gearbox. It can be a bit aggressive on the upshifts, but if you just ease off the throttles just slightly before pulling the paddle, you could smooth things out a bit.
A limited slip differential and some fat tyres then delivers the power to the tarmac.
You know, all that adds up to a 0 to 62 time of 5.2 seconds and a limited top speed of 155, which, do you know what, back then, they were big numbers. And also, you know, the rare quality, which BMW was so great at with their M cars. It feels quick, but relatively effortless, linear. Now, the E46 remained in production for some 6 years, but during that time, Mercedes and Audi produced more powerful, potentially quicker cars. But I tell you what, everyone on fifth gear wanted the keys to the M3.
Possibly because it did this. There was no better car when it came to going sideways.
Now, this car is someone's actual pride and joy, so I won't be doing any of that today, but... Oh, I appear to have got into a drift by accident.
But can it set a decent lap time around this increasingly wet track?
Right, I've got traction control off. I'm in sports. Start the watch. Here I'm looking for traction. Good apex. Little bit of oversteer, that's okay. As once the rear starts to squirm around, you can very easily get yourself in a bit of trouble on a wet track. So get the power on smooth, don't let the rear brake. It's pretty tidy. Stop the watch.
The E46 M3 crosses the line in 1 minute 36.7 seconds. Time for the latest G80. So what has 20 years done to the M3? Well, for starters, the price has gone up.
So this competition version, which is the UK's entry-level M3, will set you back 75 grand. Now, that's a lot of money. But interestingly, if you put an inflation adjustment to the value of the original E46, well, that comes in at 70 grand. So maybe this new one isn't so outrageous. Now, like the older car, I've got a straight six engine up front. It's a wee bit smaller at 3 litres, but as is the way nowadays, this car is no longer naturally aspirated.
In fact, not one, but 2 turbochargers have been added to the mix.
The result, 510 of your finest horsepowers.
So this car has 170 more horsepower than the E46. That's huge, but it's not the only thing about this car that's massive.
Now, in terms of size, this car is on a different scale. You know, it's 30 centimetres longer, 12 centimetres wider than the older car. And when you add in all the comfort, the entertainment, the safety, and all that kit and caboodle, you know, it tips the scales at a whacking 1,730 kilograms. Man, that's heavy.
That's 260 more kilos than the E46. So although the new car has a superior power-to-weight ratio, the E46 is far from disgraced.
You know, BMW have done a good job in using technology like, you know, adaptive dampers to disguise the sheer mass of this car, but it still feels heavy.
Nevertheless, it will still haul its lardy arse to 62 in under 4 seconds. That's 1.3 seconds quicker than the E46. And in a further blow to the older car's chances, this particular G80 has been fitted with an 8 grand driver's pack that includes carbon ceramic brakes.
Now, there's only one gearbox option in this car. You can't get a fancy dual clutch version. Apparently the engine torque would destroy it, which I could quite believe. So we've got an 8-speed ZF, which, to be honest, is okay.
And just to remind you, that torque figure is 650 Newton meters.
Right, enough chat. Time for a fast lap. Start the watch. You know what, I've got to be so careful. I mean, I've got the toys off. Oh, you fighter. Just so nervous in the wet.
By the first checkpoint, the G80 has opened up a slender lead of 0.4 of a second. The new car might have been ahead, but I really wasn't enjoying myself.
You know what, there's just this vagueness to the front in terms of I've got no idea what the front tyres are doing and how much grip I've got left.
Nevertheless, by the second checkpoint, the G80 is 3.7 seconds ahead.
I mean, it's bloody quick, but I must admit, it's not very nice to drive in the wet fast. Oh, and stop the watch.
The G80 crosses the line in 1 minute 31.2 seconds. That's 5.5 seconds faster than the old one.
It's a stressful drive in the wet, it really is. Yeah, I'm being hard on it, but honest to God, I'm not a fan. I think they've just gone overboard.
As predicted, the older car simply couldn't keep up with the new car's superior technology and outright grunt, particularly on the faster, open sections of the circuit. But I'll tell you what, I know which car I'd rather drive home in. One track, two cars, and a stopwatch. It's a fifth gear shootout, and this time it's old versus new in a fastest over-the-line challenge. Back in the 90s, the NSX was an awesome showcase from Japan. A V6 mid-engine supercar was like nothing we'd ever seen from Honda when it arrived in 1990. A lightweight aluminium chassis, Honda's legendary VTEC technology, all combined with some moderate input from a certain Mr. Ayrton Senna. Honda stopped making the original NSX in 2005, and this is one of the very last cars off the production line. But can a modern hatch, one with proper seats and room in the back for a trip to IKEA, actually take on a supercar we lusted after 20 years ago? Well, just look at these stats. Would you believe the new Civic Type R looks like it's packed in enough punch to take on its ancestor, and at just a fraction of the price? So then, which is fastest around the track? First up, it's the NSX.
How lovely is that? Where you can hear the induction noise. Do you know what? I've never driven one before. The chassis is gorgeous. It's supple yet stiff enough. The steering's beautiful. I mean, really lovely. That's really delightful. So the price of this car when new was 60 grand. Which, adjusting for inflation, all the rest of it, was £90,000, which was a lot of money back then, but actually, a lot of car for the money. And, this would have been a shrewd investment, actually, because, this car is a very good example of it. And this is way over 100 grand, I think, now. I suppose the most trick thing this has got is one of the first production cars to have a fly-by-wire throttle. And when Gordon Murray was working for McLaren, designing the McLaren F1, he used one of these as his daily drive. I remember hearing an interview where he said he was really impressed with the usability of this car and the visibility, and that's something he tried to incorporate into the legendary McLaren F1. It's a very, very lovely car to drive, and the way it points into a corner is really beautiful. 120 mile an hour now, nearly 140. You know what, the brakes are grumbling a bit. I need to be a bit gentle with the old car. So I wonder what sort of lap time she's going to do. Right, focus, let's get ready. Brakes were growling so much. When it's in the corner, it's just got like this flatness to it.
And the NSX crosses the line in 1 minute 21.3. Not bad for a car with its roots in the 90s. Right then, let's see if a modern hot hatch can beat that. Time for the Civic.
Here in the British Tourer Car Championships, even though this is a road car and those aren't, these things have been a right royal pain in the backside, because they're a bit quick. Initial impressions, it's too stiff. Jesus. So there's 3 driving modes. I've got this in Plus R, which basically stiffens everything up. The dampers will improve the throttle response, make it a bit sharper, a bit more edgy, and also increases this synthetic engine noise, which my God, I hate it. I want to rip it out of the car. God, it's awful. It's got amazing grip in the corner. I mean, hardly any understeers to speak of. It's a little bit, but 320 horsepower in a front-wheel drive car. Impressive. One thing I would say is the rear is too planted. Definitely needs a little bit more rotation in it. Now on this facelift model, the brakes have been uprated to give it a much better initial bite and more feel. And They have, but the thing's too stiff. You know, the rebound dampings have been wound up too much. That's what makes it pump. Touring cars don't even hop like this. So a wee bit like the NSX, you know, they've used aluminium on this car. A lot of the suspension components and the bonnet are aluminium. And also it's got like an active suspension. There's G sensors all the way around the car, so the suspension can act or react much faster than the previous version. But an interesting fact is the gear throw is identical to the NSX at 40 millimeters throw, and also they put like a, I think it's a 90 gram counterweight in it to make the shift perfect. And I have to say, the gear shift is lovely. Right, so let's have a hot lap, eh? Ooh, you fighter.
At the first checkpoint, the Civic is 1 second ahead.
Dear me! Right almighty. Right, come on, baby, let's see how we're getting on.
At the second checkpoint, it's now 2.5 seconds ahead of the NSX.
Good job I haven't got any fillings.
The Civic crosses a line in 1 minute 17.5, beating the NSX time by a little over 3 seconds. The NSX is certainly still a legend in our minds, with one of the most enjoyable chassis going. However, modern suspension and improvements in brake technology have given the Civic the edge. You can now get classic supercar levels of performance from a hatchback. 1 track, 2 cars and a stopwatch. It's the 5th gear shootout. And this time we want to have our cake and eat it, as we sample a pair of machines that whose style can carry a family in comfort, yet hurl themselves at the horizon if you fancy pressing on. We're talking about super saloons, and these two in particular, the Alfa Giulia Quadrifoglio and the Audi RS5. We first drove the Giulia back in 2018, and along with just about everybody else in the motoring world, we absolutely loved it.
It's got a really great front end.
Since then, it's been treated to a mild upgrade, so should be even better. And the 5th gear team also gave the RS5 top marks a couple of series ago. Performance Audis are often fast, but thanks to their 4-wheel drive system, can be a bit dull. However, the RS5, well, it was a real eye-opener.
I think I might prefer this over the C63.
Really? Really?
Yeah.
So, 2 cars that have massively impressed us in the past, and that just begs the question, which is faster around the 2-mile Carsacum circuit? The Alfa, well, it's got a bit more power, but with drive-through all 4 wheels, the Audi should have more grip. It's bound to be a good contest. Let's start with the Italian job.
Quadrifoglio means 4-leaf clover, and it first appeared on Alfa Romeo racing cars exactly 100 years ago to wish the driver luck. You know, I've got no idea if it worked. Chances are it didn't. But it's appeared on Alfa's most sporty, top-of-the-range models ever since.
The Alfa was developed by a small team of designers and engineers, and rumour has it they were largely left to their own devices.
So no one from the top 4 made them fit 20 cup holders and, you know, some park and all recliners.
Consequently, the Giulia focuses on the key principles of making a car go fast, one of which is weight.
1,620 kilos.
That's pretty light for a 5-seater saloon. It keeps trim thanks to an all-aluminium engine, aluminium subframes, and a liberal use of carbon fibre, including the bonnet, front splitter, and even the prop shaft.
So what's pushing it along? Well, we've got a 3-litre twin-turbo V6 kicking out 510 horsepower and 600 newton-metres of torque.
Mix those ingredients together and this Alfa will hit 62 in 3.9 seconds and go on to 191.
Tasty.
And all that is delivered through the rear wheels. But the barroom bragging means little if the car won't handle.
What's the chassis like? Do you know what? It's quite softly sprung. And I don't mean that as a criticism. It's quite relaxing to drive.
However, suspension systems that are more pliant can sometimes suffer from poorer grip. The Alfa has an electronic diff to help counteract this by reducing power to the wheel that's losing traction whilst boosting power to the one which has it.
That said, I think the diff is a little bit soft and I'm getting quite a lot of inside rear wheel spin. Just a personal thing. Do you know what? This would make a fantastic BTCC British touring car platform. And then there's the steering. You know, most manufacturers from lock to lock are about 3 turns. And I'll show you that this is substantially less. This is 2 turns lock to lock. So straight, just more than 2 turns. Arguably, you could say that makes the car very twitchy, but I like it. If you get out of shape, you've got more chances of catching quickly.
And if you're on some private tarmac, you can do this.
That's the benefit of the quick steering lock. You know, I was probably a turn and a half in a normal car of opposite lock there, and I was only at, 3/4.
So the Giulia can be a proper hooligan if you want it to be. And there's more good news.
Now, prices start at £67,000, which when you consider the new C63 is probably going to cost in excess of 20 grand more, I think you're getting a lot of car for your money.
So the Alfa delivers at the till. Will it deliver over a fast lap?
Now, I've got 4 different driving modes. Obviously, I've whacked it in race. And start the watch. So flat round this first corner. Christ, that's quick. 125, 130, 134. Woohoo! Do you know what? Feels something you could do with a bit more rebound in the dampers because it's quite bouncy. It's lovely to drive. That diff is soft. You get wheel spin at quite high speeds. And stop the watch.
The Alfa completes the lap of the Castle circuit in 1 minute 18.2 seconds. Time for the Audi RS5.
Now, the eagle-eyed amongst you would have noticed that this isn't the same car we tested a couple of years ago.
Because back then we had a 4-door Sportback, whereas today I've got a 2-door coupe.
But both under the skin are identical, and they've both got identical performance.
And okay, technically neither is a saloon, but both will transport 5 people and a load of luggage in comfort, so let's not split hairs. Right then, down to brass tacks.
Now, I banged on about the Alfa's weight earlier, so it won't come as a surprise that this is heavier, with all the 4-wheel drive stuff underneath. However, it's not that much heavier. It's only 90 kilos heavier, which is amazing, because that's only, 1 1/4 Platos.
But factor in the Audi's 60 horsepower deficit, and there's quite a difference in the power-to-weight ratio.
But if you think that's game over, well, think again. Yes, the 4-wheel drive system does add mass, but it also adds a lot more traction. 0 to 62 in this is identical to the Alfa at 3.9 seconds, which is quick.
And although the Audi's engine has less power, it has exactly the same torque at 600 Newton meters.
In fact, the engines are very similar.
Because the RS5 also has a 2.9-litre V6 twin turbo.
Let's give it a bit of a nudge. The Alfa will rev to 7,000, this is 6.5. I mean, it's a rocket ship. 140 mile an hour. Woo! Now, during normal driving, 60% of the power is pushed to the rear wheels in this Audi, but, under other conditions, that can go up to 70%.
And like the Alfa, the rear differential can overdrive the outside wheel, which Audi claim gives the car more of a rear-wheel drive feel. It was this that Vicky and Karoon particularly liked.
It was an Audi that had quite a loose rear end. Fan-flipping-tastic.
Audi call this sport differential. Now, I didn't get to drive the car last time out, so will I agree with my colleagues who called this sporty? Absolutely. This, for me, is quite a step forward from Audi's traditional saloon balance. I mean, it's incredibly sure-footed. I mean, you can almost drive it with one eye. There's still an element of Audi understeer, but it's much better than previous ones. I mean, I like it. I think it drives well.
Prices for the RS5 start at 74,000. That's £7,000 more than the Alfa. Is it worth the extra cash? Well, let the fast lap decide.
Any predictions on the lap time? I think it's going to be quite a bit quicker. Start the watch. Do you know what? It's got great entry poise. It's just glued to the road.
By the first checkpoint, the Audi is 0.7 of a second ahead of the Alfa.
I mean, I'm really hard on the power, much harder than I would be on the Alfa.
By the second checkpoint, the Audi is 1.5 seconds ahead.
Yeah, it's bloody quick, this thing. And stop the watch.
The Audi crosses the finish line in 1 minute 16.3 seconds, 1.9 seconds ahead of the Alfa.
This is probably the best four-wheel drive saloon Audi I've ever driven, actually.
Both of these cars are brilliant at what they do. Thanks to its rear-wheel drive setup, the Alfa, well, it's a bit more fun on the limit. However, the grip provided by the Audi's four-wheel drive system is more than enough to overcome its lower power and greater weight. It's properly impressed me today, and if pressing on is the priority, it's definitely worth the extra cash. Who'd have thought it?